music now I wanna, can I ever refuse it? Pulsating, vibrating, reggae, reggae, reggae. Very sky, rock, steady, mental, a quadrillion.
Thank you. Greetings and good morning, everyone. Well, I should say good after midday, because it is actually a little bit after midday today. So greetings and salutations wherever you are. And I understand we're all in very different places. So to start, I might ask you, please, I am Fofie, I'm your moderator for today, and I'm in Jamaica. This conversation is important to me because this is perhaps a situation that underpins so much of what challenges us today in terms of us achieving well-being. So for me, it's a very important conversation. I would ask each of you to introduce yourself, say where you are, and say why this is an important conversation for you today. The conversation is on trauma and collective dysfunctionality. Who are you, where are you, and why is this an important conversation for you?
Let's start with you.
Who will begin? Kaina, I'm seeing you. If you're mute, you might need to unmute.
Yes. Go ahead,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. So who am I and where I am?
Where are you and why is this an important conversation for you?
Okay.
Or to you, whichever you prefer.
Right. All right. So I am Kaina Martinez. I'm from Belize. I'm currently in Wisconsin. And this topic is interesting. I mean, this topic is, did you say interesting or no? This topic is important. That's the word. This topic is important to me because when you really look at our people, there's a collective trauma that I feel is subconscious, and having conversation on it would allow more people to bring it forth to the conscious mind. And I think because of the unconsciousness of it and lack of not much conversation around it, there's a huge part of dysfunction that happens, and it kind of looks like it's their character, it's just a way of life. Some people would say, oh, that's just the way of life. But in reality, a lot of things that people experience are called a way of life has its roots in trauma experience. So I think this is an interesting conversation to have, to bring more people to hear about it and to recognize the effect, the impact on our communities and on individuals.
Great, thank you so much for that.
If I could just add something, Fofie, about Kaina. Kaina is an Olympian.
Kaina is an
Olympian.
An Olympian. Well, she sounds like one. Her elocution just now was really fantastic, and the content, you know, the way how she talks about this being something that we're not bringing into present day conversation and bringing into conscious thought. But as an Olympian, what is your area of participation in the Olympics?
So I did the 100 meters in London Olympics several years ago. Yeah, it's hard to believe that it's been a good amount of years, but yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And Tinashe, is Tinashe there? I'm not seeing him.
No, he has no problem, so he's not coming on camera.
Okay, so we will hear but not see.
Yeah.
Tinashe, who are you? Where are you? And why is this an important conversation for you?
Thank you very much. Greetings from Zimbabwe. This side is evening. It's 7:27 in the evening. So I'm happy to be here. And but pertaining the subject is one of the painful subjects that I have ever come across, because it is face to face with reality, where we have our wishes, our will, our desire, and everything that we wish that we want to see the world going or we invest our time, our effort, our resources in an effort to get to a certain end. But in most cases, we seem to be moving in reverse. If we are to look at everything qualitatively, not quantitatively. So, in a bid to try and understand what's going on and what are the seemingly latent tendencies which seem to overwhelm our cognitive knowledge, we then realize that there is an important subject to be looked into and to be addressed, which is trauma, because behavior is actually an indication of one's internal balance or imbalance, or a society's balance or imbalance. So whatever we see, whatever we do, instead of demonizing, instead of shunning, it's important for us to understand that each and every one of us wants and wish for the best.
Exactly.
But and whenever things get opposite, it means something, and that something is not some. It's something that we need to look at it. To look at compassionately, rather than to be arrogant about it and try to attack people, attack each other, attack cultures, attack everyone whom we see different.
That's correct.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I must also say that Tinashe is the convener of this discussion.
Fabulous. And we give thanks for that, because, you know, it takes many of us to have the conversation. It takes many of us to support each other in the conversations. It takes many of us to bring our brothers and sisters along to the conversation. So Tinashe, ancestral blessings to you for bringing this conversation today. You know, as I heard you talk about being in Zimbabwe, I was Zimbabwe. we know where that comes, right? So Jamaica and Zimbabwe had a long kind of rocking relationship going Zimbabwe. Yes. And of course, Kaina is not from very far away. So
no,
she's part of the rock, you know, it's part of the rock. I made a point at a event I was at that, you know, people look at water as dividing us, but water actually doesn't divide. Water actually pulls us together because of the nature of water. It actually unites. I'm not sure where people got this idea that water divides us. It's not. It's kind of not spiritually true. It's kind of not physically true. It's kind of not mentally true. You know, we need to change perspectives around that. So I wanted to, we might be talking to an audience, lady and gentlemen, who might not perhaps have the same kind of meanings and definitions as we have around these two. And I hate to call them words because they're so much bigger than just the words that we use to represent them. But when you think about trauma, it is actually quite a big conversation. It's a big force with which so many of us have to reckon. And so for the purpose of the conversation, I'd probably like to have Tinashe speak to us a little bit about what trauma is. And then I'd like to have Kaina comment on that, her perspective of trauma. And then I want to move then to how trauma moves into collective dysfunctionality, what that is, and how trauma, because we know trauma operates at very different levels, you know, and how does that then manifest into what we call the collective dysfunctionality? And what are the intersectionalities of those? But let us start just by looking at what we say trauma is. Tinashe?
Thank you so much. I want to break down trauma into the basics that can be understood by anyone, right? Trauma is not what happened to us, but it's what happens to the system. Like it's not the physical thing or whatever that happens to us, but it's what happens to our system when certain things happen to us. Okay. What am I trying to say here? I'm saying, like, for example, if someone gets abused, the abuse that the person that is gotten by that person is not the trauma, but what happens to the abused person inside is what you call trauma.
So you're looking
right?
at trauma
So,
from the viewpoints of its impacts.
yes. Like what happened for us, trauma is what happens to us when certain things happen to us.
That's correct.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is exactly why I struggle with it, because it's not a word.
Exactly.
That's why I struggle with
Exactly.
saying, that word. Kaina, what's your thought on how would you think or suggest we look at trauma?
So like he said, trauma is what happened to you after an incident, after an occurrence, after something, after an experience. So the experience that you lived through, the experience that you receive from a certain action or a certain thing that happens to you, and it stays in the body. They have this book, I don't remember the doctor that wrote it, but the body keeps the scores. So you can relate it to like that, where it happens, but the body keeps it. The body, spirit, and mind keeps what have happened. And it kind of like goes along with you until you decide. And sometimes you're not even aware that you
That's
were
correct.
impacted. It just happened. It's within your system, and it goes as deep as generational trauma. When you really think about it, you wonder, why do I do this? But then when you look back and you trace the patterns and the experience of those before you, you get to see how deep it is, because it's what happened to the body and it passed on. It's yeah.
Yes. And we know that happens at various levels. I think clinically or in the world of medicine and health, well, and psychology to a certain extent, they look at trauma from the point of view of, acute trauma, chronic trauma, and what they call complex trauma. So we have a simple event, you have an accident or something, and, you're traumatized by that. But the impact is not as long lasting as if perhaps you had gone through a system of slavery, or if you had gone through child abuse, or if you had gone through any kind of situation that had continued over a prolonged and had been consistent over a prolonged period of time. So we know there are different impacts from the trauma, depending on how the trauma presented itself in its initial stages. Is there a way to go from any level of those trauma into what we're calling the collective dysfunctionality? And again, I'm going to hand over to Tinashe here to see how he translates that, going from one space to the next space.
Okay. First and foremost, I just want to bring this to clarity that we have been led to understand ourselves as individuals, yet we are not individuals. We are systems, right? Fofie is just like a finger to the bigger family system of the Fofie family. You understand what I mean? So the health and wellness of Fofie largely depends on the health and wellness of the bigger system, right? So if there is anything that if all the traumas that the generations before Fofie went through, they are recorded into on epigenetic on an epigenetic level and at a genetic level in Fofie's DNA, right? So when we talk about collective trauma now, we are now talking about, for example, a community can be traumatized. For example, we are talking about slavery. We have the lovely people from the Caribbean. Most of if we go back to the last generation, there was a lot of slavery which our forefathers went through, and there was a lot of suppressed emotions which are not resolved because the system would not allow. And all those all those traumas, all those emotions, they are suppressed and they are within our certain systems, in our system. So we are already, when we are born, already we are born vulnerable due to the traumas that have been going on, which have being passed on as a legacy. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
at times you do then wonder why at times you hear people saying blacks do this, blacks do that, blacks do this, blacks use drugs, blacks use what, with all this kind of thing. Yeah, just because, you know, a traumatized person, yes, of course, all of us we are traumatized, but you know, a traumatized person will spread trauma, but a healed person will spread healing, right? So the idea now, when it comes to collective trauma, it manifests itself in what you call dysfunctional behaviors, like, for example, drug and substance use, sex addiction, crime, and all those so-called social ills, right? Those things are more like if you know those things are more like dashboard warning lights. They are not the problem, but they are the dashboard warning lights to indicate a problem, right? Because, for example, if we're to ask, let's just delve in onto drug and substance use. Drug and substance use is something that can be seen across the social strata. It doesn't matter how rich someone is. It doesn't matter which country that person is coming from. Well, it doesn't matter on almost on everything that we usually point at to be the root causes. But
Right.
if you trade one thing that is common amongst those people who are into drug and substance use, you find the one thing that is common, irrespective of their social strata, color, where they come from, is pain.
So basically, you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that those behaviors are really indicators. They're really just symptoms of a bigger problem.
Yes. Yes.
And so in the communities where we find, and I like the way you talk about collective dysfunctionality, because you're saying inside the group and outside the group, these behaviors are recognized as not helpful, not useful, i.e. dysfunctional. However, that
Yes.
recognition doesn't stem the practice of the activity, what it is. It doesn't in any way curtail the activity. The activity still becomes prevalent within that group. If then, as you say, these problems, and I'd love to explore some more of what these kinds of problems are, especially in the indigenous communities. You talked about substance abuse, but we know there's a wider set of behaviors in indigenous groups, in various kinds of peoples who are connected differently with a larger global community, but are still a part of that global community. Speak a little bit for me more on how those symptoms display.
Okay. If I'm hearing you correctly, okay, for example, a snake just come into a room. We don't react the same, right? And I'm actually trying to I'm using a snake as an allegory for trauma,
Yes.
right? Let's say the snake is the trauma. Then a snake is thrown into a room full of people. Some people will faint, some people will scream, some people will freeze, some people will run away.
That's right.
The same applies to the different experiences that we've gone through. The trauma is now the trauma manifests in different ways, depending on the internal resources one system has and one system doesn't have. For example, like
We're not hearing. Is the sound being interrupted in some way?
hello?
Yes. Yes. We're
Okay,
back with
sorry.
you. You're back with us now.
Thank you, thank you. So I was saying that, so what you need to understand is, there are certain communities where you find that the violent crimes are very common, right? And in other communities, you'd realize that there's a lot of materialism. In other corner, there's a lot of what do you call it? Power addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and if you thread these kind of traumas, you get to one and the same root.
Yes.
You see, because there's a general disconnection, because we are suffering from disconnection. We've been connected to everything that comes.
Well, isn't that part of the impact of trauma and dysfunctionality, collective dysfunctionality?
Sorry?
That disconnection is an integral and foundational outcome from trauma and collective dysfunctionality. And I like the way you said, because when you say disconnection, it allows us to think of disconnection in its broadest sense. Disconnection from the idea of that there's something greater than ourselves, disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from community, disconnection from family, disconnection from traditions, from our culture, from our ways of life. So we're talking about a total wipeout of the human system there that you're talking about when you become that disconnected. Isn't that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the disconnection, what disconnection does, if you are disconnected, especially from yourself, right? Because like a person is born with the need and the right to belong, for example, right? So whenever someone that is disconnected to that foundational needs and rights of belonging, right? The person will find ways and means to belong, right? So
Functional and
challenging.
dysfunctional ways and means, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
But it's only, even what there are certain things that we term functional, but if you were to look at it qualitatively, you would realize that that they're actually dysfunctional. Like, for example, workaholics, right? When people who work so hard, we don't have time for everything, and we're up to the goal, but they are nuisance when it comes to their immediate family systems, right?
Yes.
If they have children, the children will suffer because they will never have the connection with their parents. Yet the person might be celebrated in might be someone who is well celebrated in the community,
Yes.
right? But you then breathe fire to his or her offspring because of the disconnection, and because he's trying to live a life to earn the belonging. Yet the belonging is free. It's something that you are born. It's something that you are as a people we're supposed to be socialized to unconditional love, to be loved for who we are, not because of what we do and what we have. You see, but in most cases, just because of that imbalance whereby a person is denied his right to belong, is denied his need to belong, the person will find ways and means to gain the attention that he or she thinks he or she needs, right? And it is true that attention seeking, that people would start looking at the mirror. When I say material mirror, I mean like I'm not human enough. I don't have a Porsche car. I'm not human enough. I don't have a house like this. If I'm not human enough if I don't wear this kind of labels or this kind of clothes. So whenever the person doesn't get ethic ways of securing those things, the person will do even the unethical things to secure those things that he or she thinks he needs. Then that's the dysfunctional behavior, like crime, or at times the person might use drugs and substance to numb himself to run away from him or herself. People start using sex to try and also numb the pain, power addiction, to try and feel that I'm human. You understand what I mean? And all these are
Yeah.
kind of dysfunctional behaviors that we are struggling with as a people.
Based
Yeah.
on what you just said, would you agree if we were to make a conclusive statement that sounds something like this, like most of our global population, in terms of the behaviors that we're seeing displayed based on some of the things you just even spoke about, for example, even the people who work beyond, way beyond what is necessary for well-being, would you say as a global population, we are in fact, indigenous and non-indigenous, really displaying powerful impacts and outcomes from trauma and collective dysfunctionality?
I wouldn't have said it any better. And just to top that, because I believe that our relationship with the environment is so intimate to such an extent that when one sneezes, the other will catch a flu. And if you want to see what the nature itself is actually reflecting back the abuse that we are doing to ourselves.
Exactly.
You see, climate change. We can talk. Okay, you can talk.
I wanted to bring Kaina here a little bit because much have been said. You have raised some very important points. And Kaina talked earlier about bringing this construct to the forefront, bringing these ideas, these thinkings, these ways that we're looking at as to how we're impacted by trauma, collective dysfunctionality, how we're moving away from a wholesome sense of self, and therefore a wholesome sense of our environment, and even how we kind of navigate this earth space. You have really brought so much that I am seeing intersections in your conversations. And so I'd like to have Kaina comment on some of what you've just shared with us in terms of what she sees. Kaina, I'm aware that you're Garifuna from Belize. So you are a noted, stated indigenous community. You lay claim to indigeneity in some powerful ways. How could you speak to this from that perfect space? Just really commenting on some of the things that Tinashe has raised.
Yeah, so like he said, like there's the act of disconnect. So while there's a snippet of positive to the disconnect, and here's why I'm going to say positive to the disconnect. Trauma can be overbearing. It exhausts you. You can have enough sleep and you will still feel exhausted because your body mind is running, it's on overdrive, trying to survive. And so when you disconnect, or sometimes when people disconnect, which is one of the acts that people do, they're trying to preserve themselves. And so if that continues for a longer period of time, that's where it really starts to kill your personality, kills who you are, the part that you can play as you are existing in this universe. The negative aspect of the disconnect jumps to where it's like automatic response, like you would see in our culture where some people keep quiet with what's going on that is negatively impacting because it's been like over and over been happening, and people just get to be like, well, this is a survival tactic that I do so I can go on, so quiet. Some people would stay quiet, say nothing, and some people will go as far as like different people, for different people, like respond differently, and some people will go like very verbal just to like express themselves and to show like their dissatisfaction. And sometimes there's this sense of cognitive display of like cognitive impairment that happens with this collectiveness. Like, for example, poor judgment. Like some people will come into our community and we're going to be like, oh, they're going to help us. But because of the poor judgment of surviving, it's negatively impact us instead of positively impact us. Another point that I think I thought of when I hear about disconnect is the apart from the learned behavior and the learned response, also I did mention the learned surviving tactics that people go through. So Yeah, that's what I can think about at this point. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, I like that you bring in how, about decision makings, because for me, when you look at trauma, when you look at the connective dysfunction and look at impacts on us as human beings, certainly our ability to think critically gets affected. Our feelings of, we end up with, let me speak to it from the other way, these feelings of emptiness, these feelings of not being spiritually fulfilled, these feelings of not, we're losing faith, we're losing trust. We want to walk away from things that have held us together for some, substantial portions of our lives. And not, when I say our lives, I don't just mean us present here, but generations behind us.
Right.
I want to focus a little bit though on that word disconnect, because we've all kind of brought it into a consensus. But disconnect is not negative. It's not negative, except when it comes from negative places like trauma. But even rebalancing requires us to disconnect from some of those negative outcomes that we now show as traumatized and collectively dysfunctional people. We need to disconnect from some of those behaviors and reconnect again with our sense of self, our sense of divinity, our sense of community. I like when Tinashe talks about recognizing that we're not individuals, we're parts, we're individual parts of a whole system. And I like that because for me, it ties in so beautifully to the African concept and the spiritual concept of community. When one of us is hurt, all of us is hurt. When one of us is traumatized, all of us is traumatized. So the whole system can shut down. And then the whole system starts displaying, this does not compute, and all kinds of anomalies that then move us into spaces where healing becomes an imperative for us. We have to heal. So we have to go through another set of disconnections to come into another set of reconnections that will now positively impact us, and that have its trauma attached to it as well. Am I correct, Tinashe?
Very correct. Very correct. I always tell, I always say this, if we ask the right questions, we'll get the right answer, right? And trauma itself, it's not as bad as many people might think it is, because as much as it has some kind of consequences which are not pleasing to look at or to imagine, but those things are as a result of, if the trauma is unresolved, it will breathe fire to us. But if we are to learn from it and get the lessons out of it, there's what we call post-traumatic growth, as opposed to post-traumatic disorder. Most of our highly functional people, they have a traumatic background. You know what I mean? And if you are to look into to those who are familiar with agriculture or tree or reforestation, especially when dealing with fruit trees, at times you need at a certain time you need to stress the tree so that they become resilient. You understand what I mean? And even if those going to organic chilies, there's a time where you cut them, right?
You prune.
The cutting.
So it's a kind of positive trauma.
Not prune as such, but to cut them at the same level. Yeah, to cut them at the same level, to cut them at the top, right? Not pruning, but to cut them, so that when you cut them, they'll direct their attention to build the lower part.
Yes. So you're talking about renewal and regrowth.
Exactly. You see now. So there are some of the things that we should not be overwhelmed when we start to think about it, but you need to understand, okay, so what are the processes that are needed for us to actually come back bigger? Because the trauma is just a step back for a greater jump forward. You understand what I mean? At times, because I always say to people like the traumas that you've gone through, they are more like your fingerprint passcode to your success.
Because they make you
You know,
who you are.
they make you who you are. They prepare you for certain they'll give you certain skills. They can give you, they can magnify even your talents in certain ways. You see, because if you look into like I also run a program that is called Trauma Informed Empowerment Program.
I'm sorry, say
I
it
have
again.
this.
The name of the program?
I run it's Trauma Informed Empowerment Program. Trauma Informed Empowerment Program.
The Trauma Informed Empowerment
Yes,
Program.
empowerment program.
Okay, I
Yes,
hear you.
where we are trying to where we are busy working on because we look at trauma as lemons, so we are helping and supporting the people who have gone through different kind of traumas to transform their lemons into lemonade and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
So, but
like
you have trauma lemons. Aren't you afraid you might get trauma lemonade?
sorry.
If you have trauma lemons, how do you ensure that you don't get trauma lemonade? What are your interventions like to make sure we're not getting trauma lemonade?
Okay. We do. We have a multi-tier program. We do process work where we try where we create circles that can actually help in the healing of the multinational trauma that we would have gone through. So we do process work in that regards to try and thread it and tap into your internal resources to process your own trauma, to process the collective trauma of the community, all those kind of things. Because remember, donkey years back, when we had not progressed the way we have progressed, we had a very few medical professionals, but the systems were so intact that they would move smoothly. They had systems that would govern their well-being. You understand what I mean? The connection that they had, which was actual, and the system, people would also thrive from the internal wisdom. Both body has its own wisdom. You see, you have a way of listening to your body. Like even like, do you know that blind people can become very good receptionists because they are better tuned to their body wisdom. They can tell that this person is to up no good without even seeing that person. Because how many times do you say like you feel detached to do certain things, then you say let me just do it, and when you do it you're snapped and you say, but I told myself I wasn't supposed to do this, why did I do it? You know, the gut intelligence can warn you beforehand to say that things are not well, right? And when things are well, the body as well can tell you, and our body has that connection to nature. You see, and we can even tell in terms of even when it comes to nutrition, you know, the colors, the colors of the colorful plate, a colorful plate can actually prepare the system to enjoy the dish, and it knows how it will then balance the bigger system. So
yes.
you know, there's
so
a lot.
Basically, you're saying we have an inner intelligence, Tinashe, as Black
Right.
people. As people, we have an inner intelligence that we can rely on to guide us back into balance.
Exactly. And this is not to do away with the developments which are happening, but it actually works hand in glove. And at times and with that attunement, we are better off than without.
Yes. If you would pause a moment, I'd like Kaina to kind of chip in on this idea that we do have that inner intelligence, and the way you've just said it was really beautiful, Tinashe. But also recognizing, as an Indigenous person, recognizing that inner intelligence for us as human beings is just our recognition that we participate in the intelligence that exists in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are ways you can just view the universe as a system of intelligence. look at
Exactly.
all it does, look at all it manipulates. It's a system of intelligence. So if we participate in that, then of course we have it within us to have that the intelligence that becomes a beacon, kind of guiding light back to places of well-being. Kaina, could you probably come in on that?
Yeah. So yes, I do believe that we have an inner intelligence. If you look back to our culture, how our people connect as Black people, how they connect, how they bring each other together, and how they were able to do a lot of things that word really can't explain. It happens. However, because of the trauma or the impact of trauma, that inner intelligence has also been tampered with. And sometimes it becomes challenging to really trust that inner part of ourselves. So like he talked about, I like how he talked about the trauma-informed empowerment program that he has, because now you're not connecting, you're not just dealing with one person. Like he talked about how within one person, there's a system. Like we have our body, and our body is the system, but they're just parts of our body. Let's say our hand, it still impacts the entire system. So when we have this collective people coming together collectively and talk about these experiences and have these experiences shared among each other, which is what our ancestors did before. I know for my culture, that was one of the things that like they have the Diggle, that the more I'm learning about it, it was a place where the Garifuna people come together and talk about these different things that was not going on right, bringing our people together. So with collective, with bringing this system together, the system of our people together, there's that opportunity to trust that inner intelligence again that has been tampered with the outside, or with the impact of the trauma, with the experience that we've had or how we've handled it. So going back to that, I believe that going back to that, trusting that inner intelligence, there also must there's a need of support system. Yes, we may be individual, but we are not individuals. We are like a part of a system where we need to connect and be with each other, or have the support of another to be able to trust that inner aspect of ourselves.
Yes. And even in that case,
Yeah.
even more
Fofie,
healing is, I'm coming, as a matter of fact, I was coming to you as just closing with Kaina. In that case, even the healing that we're talking about is collective, then is approached collectively. And I was about to say, we have two gentlemen who have been sitting and watching and participating in the hearing and I'd love to hear your comments on any or all of that has already been shared.
No, I just wanted to ask a question, Tinashe, a question, because he mentioned it about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to really get an understanding or ask him to expand on how the epigenetic behavior affect PTSD, or what's the real relationship? Because there must be a relationship that exists, for us, as a people, sometimes become, passive about issues that are very important. So,
yes.
And I'd like him to just expand on that or talk about it a little bit.
Yes. And before you do that, Tinashe, Flavius, do you have a comment or a question so we can deal with both at the same? I mean, what are you hearing, Flavius? Is it music to your ear? Is it, distressful? How are you receiving this conversation on trauma and dysfunctionality? And how do you see, are you seeing any of that, in the spaces you have been?
No, I am enjoying it. I mean, lots of good information.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like you to have a look at is, I don't know if you could call it intertwining or what, or not, of the physical and the mental.
Well, you can't leave out the spiritual.
Yeah, and
So
the
we talk
spiritual
about
too,
physical,
yes.
mental, and I think in a way we've been covering all of the aspects, probably not because we say so, but because the conversation has it, you know, how things get affected physically. When we talk about the impacts don't happen in just any one location, they happen to the system, as
Yes.
Tinashe likes to call it. And the system is mind, body, spirit. The system is community, and that's how community exists, mind, body, spirit. So Tinashe, I'd like you to hear your response to Courtney's question on PTSD. And I'm not sure if you're particularly interested in PTSD because there are a number of the issues associated with the whole thing about autism, AHDH, and all these things. Do you want particularly to hear about just PTSD, Courtney, or can he answer generally about a whole that complex of situations that we're facing, giving names to in today's world?
Well, you know, you can't just limit it to the PTSD thing in a relationship because as we know that people who suffer from PTSD, they, you know, they go off the chain. And, you know, maybe our next follow-up question within that is how these hormones, you know, act within the brain of these people, because we know that the hormones.
I have to protect Tinashe, you know, the poor man.
Yeah, I know.
Hormones in the brain now. You might need to have
because
you might need to make a personal visit.
Yeah, so you know, I just want him to talk about it. No, because all trauma,
Tinashe, as best you can.
trauma that
Could you
we
probably
go
speak
through
to that?
affects our brains. So
Yep,
I just want him to talk about that epigenetic in a relationship between PTSD.
Yeah, I think we
Tinashe.
also have another person. I think we also have another person who hasn't shared anything.
I'm sorry, say this again.
I think we have another person who is still to say something.
No,
I think
he spoke.
that
He
one.
spoke.
I'm seeing someone else, like Reggie Nostalgia. Isn't that?
I'm not sure.
No, that's
Oh,
Franco.
that's Franco. That's Franco.
Franco.
Yeah, Franco. Yeah.
Hello, greetings and salutations and welcome. Yeah, he's not.
He's on mute. He's on mute. He's on mute.
Franco, can you unmute?
Well, let's move on.
Okay,
Whenever
let's
he
continue.
unmutes, we will greet him.
Go until he comes back.
All right.
Please
Okay,
continue,
fine.
Tinashe.
All right. I just want to give an example. Like when you talk about you know, there are certain if you look into, for example, if you look into there are certain things that might be peculiar. The children of, for example, of war veterans can be very sensitive if you discuss certain things to do with war or when they get into a war setting. You understand what I mean? To say like they are a bit sensitive to that regard, in that regards, because what happens is when, for example, I'll give an example of when a woman gets traumatized, even the eggs inside her also get traumatized.
Yes.
Right? And that that trauma becomes a print into those eggs. So when the child is born, when conception happens, when a child is then born, the body of that child will be having all that information inside it.
Yes,
So
already
when it
predisposed. The child is already predisposed.
Exactly. So whenever certain triggers come into play, they are about to react based on the reactions that either they will freeze, they will flee, or they'll fight. Because have you ever come across a scenario whereby someone would just say, who just say a word, then a person, like for example, like imagine you are in a taxi. I don't know what you call. I don't know if you call them taxis there, the public transport, right? Then someone say that maybe drop me by the bus stop. Then the driver will say, why do I need to drop you? Just trying to pull the passenger's leg, something like that. Then the passenger say, come on, man, just leave me there, right? Then in other instance, the passenger will then become very, very furious and start saying even all the F words. You're now taking advantage of me, and all of those kind of things, shouting at someone. But the same thing, someone would have happened to someone, and someone would have just laughed it off and say, come on, man, just leave me there. Hey, come on. You see? So the difference between the two people is the other one is what you call unintegrated trauma, which is a direct link to the PTSD. It's more like PTSD manifesting. And it's not every time clinical. At times it's not even clinical, but you can see it can be switched on by triggers.
Right.
You see now. So when you talk about whatever experience that our parents, our grandparents have gone through, they are already in us. And when we are put into a certain corners or into certain environments, which our parents or our grandparents went through, we are either we are triggered, and we then react or respond depending on amount of work that we would have done with the previous traumas. Because once we deal with our previous traumas, we will be able to respond to triggers. But if we don't deal with our previous traumas, we will then react to those traumas. You see, that's the difference. So a person who has healed will respond, whilst a person who hasn't dealt with the past traumas will tend to react. In most cases, causing more harm than good.
Okay. Did that help you a little bit, Courtney?
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Tinashe. Yeah.
Because it's really one of the things that have come into conversation in recent years, and quite a bit of research and attention has been paid because of really just how it impacts the persons and the communities that they're a part of on a regular daily basis. It can really be, I mean, even simple things like sleeping can be disrupted. I don't know if you have any idea how we become disoriented, discombobulated when we get sleep deprived. So even something as simple as that, which is one of the symptoms of PTSD, can really have a traumatic effect on your life. So let us move a little bit ahead, because one of the things I'd love Tinashe to speak about, and he started a little bit. So we have these situations. We have indigenous communities, Native American communities, for example, in the United States and elsewhere, are known for some of the dysfunctions that affect them today, the alcoholism, the even things like abuse, domestic violence, and various kinds of abuse among people who once knew that they were walking with divinity, that they were special, that as aspects of creation, they're sacred. And now these people, as a stress response, are walking into these areas of drug abuse, and so many. It is actually painful to even call some of these situations that are attending these people, because it's like you'd rather them not be, what you're talking about. But the need for healing, and Tinashe, I'm coming from your language because you used the word earlier, heal. And I tell you, I have a problem with this word thing, but you use that construct. For me, healing is a whole construct. And you used that term heal prior to, some of the other conversations that have happened. So how do we recognize this need for healing, and how do we step into this healing? You started hinting at it when you're talking about your program, but in a more general way, and perhaps suggesting some specific kinds of intervention that can happen, you know, across communities. As you talked about the system, how do we approach it from a system point of view, from a community point of view? Still recognizing that, of course, there's some individual level work to be done, you know. How do we move from trauma, from collective dysfunctionality to well-being? And how does healing operate as a modality in that setting?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. You know, I think the first point or the first step towards healing is to create safe spaces, right? Safe spaces is a space where anyone and everyone is confident and comfortable to share anything and everything without fear of being judged.
It's a place where you can be vulnerable.
Yes. And this is the chief ingredient for here. This is the chief ingredient if healing was a case, right? And if we have these spaces where people just come and be vulnerable, then with good facilitation, different modalities can then be used to try and respond to different kind of issues that will be surfacing. But it was like, I would track like this, what was like, for me, I understand like trauma is more like you're blowing a balloon. Each time you go through trauma, a balloon is blown. Next time it's blown again. Next time it's blown again. Next time it's blown again. And it will come a point in time when it says enough is enough. And the end attempt to blow even a little bit, it will explode. Right? So the healing spaces now, they are more like we are opening the balloon. Like, yes, it has been blown, but you're now opening. You're now opening so that it can actually release excess air.
You're dissipating that energy.
Exactly, you're dissipating that energy. You see? So we need to have safe spaces, right? So that we can then be able to harness the power of trauma. Because like trauma knows no, what can I say? No good or bad, right? If someone has the talent, if that person is traumatized, he will use his or her talent to traumatize other people. If that person gets resources, he or she will use the same resources to spread trauma. You see? So it is important now to have these spaces to support our own, to support our people, so that they can then be able to heal, so that they, with their resources, with their talents, with their skills, they can then be able to spread healing. You see? Because by becoming the change that you want to become, that you want to see in the next person, you know, the power is, it's amazing. The nucleus of people, of a huge community, or the influence of a huge individual can actually radiate positive energy that can melt the trauma ices, the trauma ice, because trauma is more like ice. When you hit the ice, you know what happens when you hit the ice? You will not be able to glide, right? So it is important now to have that positive, that warm, that energy to defrost or to unfreeze
So if I get you to Nash, you're talking about a transformation.
Exactly.
So in other words, you need something, you need an energy of transformation whatever that looks like, because that has to manifest itself in some way, some tool that somebody can use, but that's something that carries that energy of transformation to help to shift that balance.
Yes, in fact, you know, as a people, we are also energetic beings,
That's correct.
right? We are energetic beings. So at times, in fact, in every way, in each and every time, we connect to other people or to other communities energetically, right? So it is important to understand what kind of energy am I emitting? Because if you are traumatized, you obviously emit a traumatic energy to your
Right.
sphere of influence. And if you are healed, you also extend a healing energy to your sphere of influence.
Yes.
So it is you and I who are the first point of call when it comes to this healing that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you then find out the more we get into this healing trajectory, we also attract the same people. We also attract people who are also in the same trajectory, and we become a force together.
So we're talking actually of some very powerful spiritual principles here and universal principles, because we're talking about, you mentioned the word energetic. We are energetic beings, and it's because we're energetic beings why we can talk about, for example, an energy of transformation, because that operates at an energetic level. That's why we can talk, for example, about, as you said, shifting, because energy shifts and flexes and moves. That's why we can bring in a conversation on vibration. When you're in a traumatized space, you're operating at a low level of vibration. You want to move to a space of healing because that elevates your vibration. So you're operating as a better human being. You're at a higher level of vibration. You're moving towards, your elevation. Am I saying am I capturing what you're saying, Tinashe?
Yes, of course. Yes, you are.
Yes. And so we can put the conversations many ways, because we might have many people listening who identify with various different things. When we're vibrating at a certain level, we also attract those who are also vibrating at that level and are attracted to others at that level. So again, we're building a new system, a new community, but at a higher level of vibration. We're working and we're purging, we're dismissing a lot of the impacts and the outcomes of the trauma, and we're moving to really being stronger, more self-possessed, more responsible members of community, more critical thinkers, better decision makers. So we're actually now in a position to better govern our lives and make sure that our community is moving towards a greater good. Because the trauma and the cognitive dysfunctionality had kind of shifted us from that path, hadn't it?
Exactly. Because we now move from talk shows into workshops, into workshops whereby we'll start to walk the talk. Because right now we have people who
indeed.
Right now we are a race which is known about talking good but not doing any good. You understand what I mean? We know what's good. We have brilliant aspirations. We always talk about it. We sing about it. But it's not coming from inside ourselves, because there's a lot of chaos and noise inside ourselves.
That's
right. And we cannot be able to walk the talk because of the internal noises. But when we then heal and we start projecting what is from within ourselves, we'll be in a position to even walk the talk and live a positive trail wherever we find ourselves, wherever we find ourselves in.
And I'd like to bring Kaina a little bit, because there's a trend that Tinashe is going on here, and I'm going to follow it, because I think what I'm hearing out of his conversation is how that trauma and that dysfunctionality actually moved you out of an authentic self. And he says, until you know yourself again, until you can go back to that, the healing is going to be, a difficult conversation to have. How do you see that, Kaina?
I definitely see that as truth. because like if you're when you're in trauma, when you're in this space of trauma, you're not being yourself. You're not who you are. You're someone else, unfortunately, because you're trying to survive. And so some of the things that I look at as you continue the journey of regaining and rebuilding who you are, and even more of who you have been, becoming aware. Awareness is a huge aspect of it. Becoming aware of what the experiences are and where you have been, what you're going through is one step forward. And I like to bring three other stuff that he had Tinashe has also mentioned: the safe space. And
Yes.
apart from the safe space, I always also want to say a neutral space, because not all the time you're going to be in a safe space. If you really look at it, we are really not in a safe space. I know as a woman of color, indigenous woman, I'm not always in a safe space, but I can find a neutral place. And if that neutral place is there for my existence, they see my humanity in theirs, then that is an opportunity for me to find my healing. But it needs to be at least a neutral place. The safe space, not to turn away from that because it's important, a place where you need to feel like whatever you say will not be used against you, but it will be used to help you rediscover your true self, which adds to your healing. And oftentimes, when it comes to trauma, we don't hear how much of, oh, I must grieve my trauma. But the reality is grieving our trauma is a very important aspect of it, and even to mourn that trauma, in order for us to continue our healing journey. Like the mourning part, like feel the pain, the outward expression of what you've experienced. And that doesn't mean you're going to hear somebody say, oh, I'm sorry that I did this. No, but just for you, for yourself, with the community that is with you, for you to be able to bring it out, take that toxicness out of your body. Cry if you have to cry, to do something that is going to help you work through that experience. And the grieving aspect is more like the deep internal aspect of your being, the body, spirit, and mind connecting itself together to find that healing process, to make sense out of the experiences that has take control of your body, spirit, and mind. And
Indeed.
finally, I want to say the self-compassion aspect of it is very important, that we consider self-compassion, because like I said earlier, somebody that hurt you or contribute to the trauma that you've experienced may never say, I'm sorry. So we cannot look for that in order for us to take the next pace, because we may be poisoning ourselves. We may be giving somebody the poison that we're drinking for ourselves, and so giving ourselves that sense of self-compassion. Oh, I was in that space because I never know better, or you know what, my ancestor has experienced this, I was not part of it, but I'm also grateful for those that were before me that stand and their hard work. I can look back, and those different things can assist us to being that sense of compassion as we journey through that healing. And because there's hope, there's
Yes.
hope that we can take this toxic that trauma brings to us and release it. So yeah.
Yes, and I like you say that there's hope, but I think in a lot of ways we have a mandate to do that for ourselves and our communities and, the system that Tinashe talks about. We'll have to close in a short while, but before we close, Tinashe, could you tell us a little bit about the Chartered Institute of Organic Health?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is that related to your trauma work?
Clearly.
Yeah. Chartered Institute of Organic Health Trust is a social and environmental rehabilitation organization. Social and environmental rehabilitation organization.
Social, environmental. I missed the third word.
I said social and environmental rehabilitation.
Viability. Okay.
Rehabilitation.
Oh, rehabilitate. Right. Okay, I got you.
Rehabilitation. Yeah, rehabilitation organization.
Okay.
Basically, basically we are into, we respond to various social environmental issues. Like, we deal with, we even work with prisons on crime. We do, we work on drug and substance use, climate change, um, suicides, just to name a few.
Right. And you've recognized climate change as a space of trauma, even as we're trying to grapple with the physical impacts of that. I like that you do that, because many of us, when we think about trauma, we think we're talking about things of the past, when trauma is actually something we're experiencing every day. But depending on how we manage it, it can become a collective dysfunctionality or not. Because even as we're participating in trauma on a daily basis, we should participate in the healing of the trauma on a daily basis. Many of us are going to work every day stressed out and that's trauma. And if we keep doing it, if we're not participating in the healing and making the adjustments that we think we need for well-being and for balance, over time, then we get the collective dysfunctionality, because then it becomes really a very complex impact, and the outcomes are not pleasant, because you get children and families who are not really well attended, nurtured, sustained. And we're destroying ourselves when we do that. So trauma is not a thing of the past. It is, but it also exists in the present. And part of our focus has to be to how to see a future where trauma is minimized and managed in a way that doesn't put us out of well-being and put us out of balance. There's so much to talk about. We talked about safe spaces, but there's so many other kinds of interventions that we need at community level. Reconnecting ourselves with ourselves, reconnecting ourselves with ourselves, reconnecting to community, reconnected to that idea of a greater force, something higher than ourselves, reconnecting with our environment, even how we manage climate change in its present iteration is a big challenge for us that can really result in serious trauma when we look at what's happening on the earth space. So this is a big conversation. I think we have touched the surface of it, and I'm going to invite you to perhaps give your closing works. What would you like people to take away from this conversation on trauma and collective dysfunctionality? What would you like to, most importantly, have people understand?
Okay. What I really want people to understand is that separation is an illusion. We have been taught that we have whites, we have blacks, we have people from the Caribbean, we have people from Africa, we have people from all those kind of things. All that is an illusion. We are one big system.
The earth is one.
Yeah, it is one, and there's no separation between us and the environment. We are the environment. The environment is us.
That's correct.
The loss of biodiversity, the loss of biodiversity it's not an environmental loss. It's a loss of life, and we are part of life. So whenever we lose anything, no matter how small, even though we don't see some of the microorganisms that we are losing.
That's correct.
But whatever we lose, we pay for it. You see?
And it affects us.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we just need to stay tuned, and we need to be attuned to the realities of life and create space. When I said safe spaces, a safe space for me, it's a hub for healing in all its modalities. You understand what I mean? Where you can do meditate, you can see meditation coming in, you can see climate change, climate mitigation programs coming in. You can everything referencing life, giving life, respecting each other, dignity, seeing dignity of the environment, seeing dignity in everything and everyone, something like that. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the invite.
Yes. Kaina, may I have
So great.
your closing words? You're mute. Unmute your mic, please.
Gotcha.
Yes.
All right. Well, first, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here and share parts of what I know. I would also want to finish off by saying that, yes, like Tinashe have expressed, we are all connected and everything we do impact each other. And if we can allow ourselves to be a safe place or a neutral space for people to have that sense of healing, it's just human of us to do. We also, as individual and as collective as a system, every hand that we, how would I say it? Like if you look at our body being the system, every parts of our body is useful. And when we get to use it and appreciate it for what it's used for, rather than discriminate against, I use my hand only to eat, like that's all I do. Like appreciate all aspect of it and continue to work towards that healing aspect of our being. And be patient with people, because going through trauma is not easy. I'm going to attest to the fact that I've unfortunately but fortunately lived through many of them. And I've been humbled as I take my own personal journey. And I realized how much patience we need for each other, because you never know what the other person is experiencing. And just be nice to another human being, because it's
Indeed.
very helpful.
Just want to express my gratitude to you all for being here and for allowing me the opportunity to chat with you all, for the sharing. It is so positive to share, to see how ideas. You are Gary Funa. You're from Belize, but you're in where are you now? I've forgotten where you said you were, Kaina.
I'm currently in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin.
Yes.
Tinashe in Zimbabwe. I'm in Jamaica. Flavius is Jamaica. Courtney is Jamaica. And yet we could come together and find connections, connectivity. We could come together and find consensus around some certain things. We were more focused on what was common to us than what would have divided us. And I think that it's a blessing when we can do that, when we can look, as Tinashe says, the earth is one. We're one people, we're one race, we're human being, we're one aspect of God's creation. It is a problem we start to make ourselves more than that, when we start to be so powerfully different to one part to the next part, because our strength really is in our collectivity when it is functional. When it is functional. We don't want collective dysfunction. We want collective functionality. And I think that's a powerful space to be. Thank you both for your time, taking the time to come and share. Thank you so very much. Blessings to you, your ancestors, and all those who work with you. Flavius.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the program. This was wonderful. I mean, I had a great time just here listening to all these things. But I think we're not finished. I think we have just touched the surface. So we'd like to invite you all back at a date to be announced, where we can continue from where we left off today.
Yes, this is a big
We should be
conversation.
able to make it, so we can, because it's a huge topic.
Yes.
It's not going anywhere. So the more we can look at it, see what needs to be done, and the word is healing. What are the best ways that we can heal? What's the best thing that we can do? So it's very important. So I would love for you to come back. We will invite a few other people. I'm very sorry Mr. Medford couldn't make it today. Up to yesterday, he had an emergency this morning and couldn't make it today. So we are hoping that he will be here the next time.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence, Lawrence.
Carlton Medford.
Yes, but Mr. Ngoro was also.
Okay, yeah. Lawrence couldn't make it as well. Yeah,
Yes.
he was out of town.
Yeah, we'll pray that whatever they had to deal with would be successfully attended to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you very much. And
Gratitude.
we will definitely be in touch. Many
Okay,
thanks
goodbye.
on the
Everyone.
Reach Talk podcast.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
You lead us to full. You belong far away away. Ajugwala lebabu seru. Lida mua, lida sungfula. Lida mua, lida sungfula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer so rough. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me know set me if it could flee. Me have to take away me say. Me have to take away me say. Me have to hide like a thief in the night. Me have to get out of sight. Me have to take away myself. I have to take away myself. I have to utilize I will.